George Karl just released his controversial book, Furious George, My 40 Years Dealing with NBA Divas, Clueless GMs, and 4-shot selection. George Karl emphasizes how Carmelo is a superstar and probably the best player he's ever coached, but he doesn't play defense. And this is something we've known. Carmelo doesn't play defense. It's not just George Karl telling you this. We've seen him countless and countless times again. He doesn't try on the defensive end of the floor as hard as he could, because George Karl says that Carmelo could be the best rebounder. He could be one of the best defenders on any team just because he's so athletic and so talented and so gifted. But Carmelo he has an ego that George Karl makes a point that J.R. Smith, Kenyon Martin, Carmelo Anthony, and countless other players in today's game, they start recruiting all these Carmelo Anthonys and LeBron James since they're in middle school. So they never get to develop because the AAU program, it's you're going to a basketball camp where it's hosted by Nike or Under Armour or one of these big companies. There's scouts, there's agents who want to sign you, like at that young age, is telling you like, oh, I could be your agent in the future. And when you're at those camps, when you're a young player, you have to stand out. It's all about yourself. You don't have a team because it's only little camps in the summer. It's travel teams. It's these championship events that they host. You have to become the best player that you can for yourself. Not as a team. You have to be the best player for yourself in order to get a scholarship, in order to get recognized by the school you want, in order if you're not a big name and then you start balling out, then people start looking at you. It's all about yourself. And in college, the same thing. You go to college for only 1 year. Only 1 year you're in college. Since most players only go to college for one season, you don't grow with that team. You don't become a team player. Even though you might be part of some great teams in UConn and Kentucky and North Carolina and Duke and all these teams, your ultimate goal is to get recruited to the NBA in that 1 year. So all these players, it's all about themselves. It's all about being selfish because you're trying to hustle, you're trying to make money. So George Karl doesn't blame the players because he blames the system. The system is what creates these players, these selfish players that just think about themselves. So when they transition to the NBA, they have a hard time. Just stop worrying about their stats. Most of them want to be about them. They want to be me, instead of being team players and knowing that they can do anything for them to win. The average NBA career is about 4 to 5 years. So you have to make as much money as you can in those 4 to 5 years. So you're not worried about building a team that's going to take 2-3 years to become a championship team, because most players are worried that their careers are not going to last that long. So Carmelo Anthony, J.R. Smith, Kenyon Martin, when he was with the Nuggets, he talks about how these guys, they were rooted from these AAU and the NCAA. So they didn't know how to work as a team, and he had trouble coaching these guys. And George Karl has been dealing with, he talks about dealing with divas when he was in Seattle, when he was in Cleveland, and he shipped out some of their stars, even in Milwaukee. He traded some of the stars like Ray Allen. He said Ray Allen was one of those guys too. When he traded those players, people were like, wow, that's crazy. But he had his best years when he got rid of these superstars that weren't listening to him, that he had problems in the locker room, that he talked about how Carmelo Anthony, he didn't want to go back in the game in one of his games during Denver in the playoffs because he said that he didn't get enough touches, and Kenyon Martin only played 9 minutes in one of the playoff games, so he didn't want to play the second half, so he sat him and he had to suspend him. He talks about these types of players, and when he got rid of some of these players that were just conflicting with his style about becoming part of the team, that's when his most successful teams were with Gary Payton. He made it to the NBA Finals and lost to the Bulls and Jordan. I get that's controversial, but he makes excellent points. It's not just gasbagging. He brings up why these players act this way, or why he doesn't know all the details, but it makes sense. In my perspective, it makes sense how he described Carmelo and JR and DeMarcus Cousins and these guys. Now, when it comes to the NBA being rigged, we've heard countless accounts. Don't even get me started on the 2007 San Antonio versus Phoenix, because that was just, that series, that year, if the Suns would have won that series, they would have won the NBA championship. But the NBA is rigged, like we know, and the refs were throwing the games. When he was with the Supersonics in the Western Conference Finals, he faced Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns. And in the Game 7 of that series, the Phoenix Suns shot 64 free throws. 64 free throws. Charles Barkley himself shot 23 free throws that game. That's insane. And it was a game 7, and these refs were just literally favoring Phoenix because the NBA wanted Charles Barkley versus Michael Jordan in the NBA Finals. And when he was with Milwaukee, he got again screwed by the refs. And then he talks about luck because the NBA, as talented as you are, sometimes it comes down to one final shot. A lot of games come down on a game 7 to a final shot, or it comes down. He gives the example of the 2013 Miami Heat when the Spurs already won the championship. LeBron misses the 3. Chris Bosh gets the ball, gives it to Ray Allen, ties the game, and then eventually the momentum switched to Miami's side, and the Heat ended up winning the NBA championship from the Spurs. And everyone knew that the Spurs were a better team. Everyone knew the Spurs should have won that series, but luck has his ways. Sometimes a key injury right before the playoffs, which he had. And finally, George Karl, he also talks about his personal life, how he had to overcome cancer twice because he just had a terrible diet. He would be eating donuts every day, drinking. He said he was drinking, I think it was 9 sodas a day. He was drinking a beer every night after every meal. He was kind of a drunk. He says he was never a drunk. He wasn't an alcoholic, but he was drinking every day, and he talks about drinking Miller Lite every day. After every meal, 2 Miller Lights, or he would go to a restaurant and order 2 Miller Lights with his meal because he knew by the time he finished the other one, if the waiter was going to take too long to bring the second one, so he would order 2 Miller Lights at once. It gets really personal, and how he overcame that, and right now he talks about he still wants to coach in the NBA. If you're an NBA fan or just a fan of sports in general, pick up this book and learn about his stories. If you're an aspiring coach, he gives you a lot of lessons on how he runs his team, on what's worked for him and what hasn't worked, and some lessons from some of his coaches and mentors that he had in North Carolina and others in the NBA, and his personal relationship with some of his players like Gary Payton, and his feud with Phil Jackson that he had over the years, because it seemed like Phil Jackson was always knocking him out of the playoffs, or when he was close to winning a championship, Phil Jackson was always in the way. Overall, not as controversial as I expected, because he explains all his controversy. He talked all the stuff that I've been talking about on ESPN and Stephen A. Smith's been debating and this and that. It's not that serious because he explains and he gives reasoning to his hot takes, as he would say. That's my review for this George Karl's new book. So thank you guys for watching. My name is Angel, and I'll see you guys next time.